let's get one thing out of the way. Do I have to say Youngpuke the entire time? And
Just
I
call
can't.
me YP. Just call me YP2. Please. Name changes. Name changes when. Uh, but
Yeah.
yes, you can call me whatever.
So
Young
I
Puke, YP.
right. I can't call you by your real name.
Real name, yeah.
As um I always make fun of people, or I always used to make fun of CSM members that were like, oh, CCP so and so. I don't remember his CCP name. But then if you're in it for 2 years and they just strictly don't go by their CCP names, right? They just go by their normal names. Then it's very, very difficult to switch back to the CCP names, and to not dox people. So I will do my best not to dox you, my friend. And we're gonna talk about Low-Sec. First of all, I mean, welcome to the show. You haven't been on here before. I think I guess our play styles don't naturally intersect daily, I would say. Although in some way they all do, because everyone somehow interacts with the market
Mhm.
and the economy of EVE Online. But overall, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say some people might not know who you are. So, YP, can you give us a quick introduction of who you are, what you do in Eve, and what you role on the CSMs?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And it's awesome to be here. I always big fan. So, and I think you do wonderful and great work. First and foremost, you should subscribe. Um, and the second thing to answer your question, though, so I am a Low-Sec Alliance executive of an alliance called Sedition. We started out before Uprising. We decided to rebuild our alliance as a Galente faction warfare alliance. We then moved from Galente faction warfare to Angel Cartel. So we're now living in Secede. So if you want to bring a roaming fleet and you want to fight, come to Secede. And now we're just a PvP, mid-scale, small gang, low-sec faction warfare, or low-sec faction warfare group. We don't just do fac war. We pretty much do all PvP. We're just like directly enlisted in fac war. And basically my day-to-day is I run and manage the alliance, organize content, fleet, PvP opportunities, basically try to start things to happen in low-sec, which is the best space in the game. The other aspect, I have CSM, so I am one of, I would say, like the low sec voices, smaller group. I mean, as I would say, you're in the smallest group yourself. Um, but I'm a low sec, smaller, like 150 active players. Compared to my null companions, I try to bring in a different perspective of like what do smaller groups may perceive, what do faction warfare needs are, low sec needs need to be, and really championing PvP and low sec as the best place to have high risk, high reward PvP. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I like to sell the content that we do. So
Nice. And I imagine low-sec is a little bit like wormholes, as in if you're running as a low-sec candidate, you have to kind of rally the troops behind you. How did you manage to do that? Like, how did you manage to rally lowsec behind you? Because I mean, I know I know from from my community that I think there are a lot of people that like you. There are also a lot of people that don't like you, and so I imagine running a campaign on that, just because you might be not as well like in game because of the things you do in game, that might be kind of difficult. So can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, so low sec I think is very much like old null right now, where it was very tribal. So you have basically low sec tribes, and I'm part of one tribe, one could say. And yeah, there's a lot of people that we shoot one day, and we form in the same fleet the next day. And I think that's where peak low sec culture is that we'll shoot each other. I'll shoot your Astra house, or I'll shoot your fort, or whatever. The next day, we may be in the same fleet together, shooting an opposing target. And I think some people get that as a culture or as a mentality. Other people, they hold grudges, they have vendettas. But I think part of the reason is that we do have lots of really competent low sec candidates that have ran over the years. And, I was able to get top 10, but I think what demarcated me from the other low sec candidates was for the past 2, 3 years, I've been working really closely with CCP on like advocating for low sec. What are the needs? writing up Reddit posts, writing up white letters, working with other people in faction warfare and Low-Sec to get shit done. Whether it was fixing battlefields, whether it was changing plex mechanics, whether it was improving LP stores, whether it's the most recent updates with March 12th, making sure that Low-Sec can be as dynamic as it can be. And I think that track record hopefully appealed to CCP, like, oh, this person has ideas, and they implemented the ideas that we've sort of worked on. And then that track record allowed them to feel comfortable selecting me as a selectee, as some people call it, which I think is funny. Um, but no, I mean, there's a lot of good Low-Sec people that would bring thought. But what really the most important thing is, like, can we move the needle? Can we move the needle forward and make Eve a better place? And I think we've started doing that as a CSM 19. I know it's a little bit spoilers ahead of what we're going to talk about, but I think like that's how we rally. It's like, yeah, there may be skeptics, but I hope they see the hard work that we're putting in, and that we're getting some good results so far. And I think that's really important to note, is that we work as a team as in the CSM, and that it's not just my voice. I'm carrying everything. It's not the case at all. We've worked really, really closely together to make sure that the game is in a better spot.
I think that's actually
Hopefully, that answered your question.
it's a good it's maybe a good peek into what goes on behind the scenes, because I had exchanges with you before you got on the CSM, because there you guys in Low-Sec you call it, I think, white papers, or however, position papers. You actually get together across alliances and hammer out what the important points are that need to be addressed, and formulate that into actual papers that are pages and pages long, and you try to get CSM support. So even before you got on the CSM, you were already active in that community. And can you let maybe everyone else in on what the process is like behind? Because I think people see the player on one hand, but people don't see the effort, the massive effort that goes into improving this game in the background.
So basically, every day, not every day, but I think often when we have like very difficult problems, it's getting everybody in a room, people from different gameplay. So it's either it's like, let's say the Galente Caldari faction warfare, or if it's Amar Mimitar Warzone, or if it's general Low-Sec blocks, like whether it's Big AB or Snuff. Not Shadow Cartel anymore though. And that these three, you get all these groups in a room together, and you basically have to hammer out the issue. Like, this is the problem we're all experiencing. This is the problem how we describe it, and we have to state the problem clearly so the developer, whoever looks over it, really understands what we're trying to hammer out. And then we offer one or two solutions. Like, this would make it better. So, like, for example, FCs and Low-Sec, before I even started doing white papers, the FCs of Low-Sec wanted to make Citadel changes. I think it was in 2020. And I wasn't included, but a bunch of Low-Sec FCs wrote a white paper, basically, essentially. They posted on Reddit. 9 months later, CCP made medium Citadel changes. The big change, right, was that instead of having 3 timers on Astra houses and Athenors, it was only 2. So you had to defend your structure the next time because you had an armor timer and a hull timer. Like, these quality of life changes. And so a lot of this planning and organization is getting people that may not like each other across space or New Eden coming together, finding a solution, agreeing on the problem, making sure that the solution doesn't benefit any group, and then apply it. And then we have to keep advocating. It's messaging CCP, which I encourage anybody to do. They have community developers for a reason. They're there to talk to you and to really understand your perspective. And you have an influence. Like, you don't have to be on the CSM to get change rolling. You can do it yourself. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of communication. You got to build a reputation. You got to really show your worth. Because I remember his name's Ithaca Hawk, but CCP Overload said on his AT stream, there's a lot of EVE players, and a lot of them have really fucking stupid ideas. So they have to shift through everything. But once you show yourself as you're really putting some thought into it, like as Oz has done, Drake Idian, I always butcher his last name, has done. Like, if you show your due diligence and you work together really well with people, those ideas are going to be floated to the top, and you can really get change going at CCP. It's a lot of communication, and basically it's shaking hands with other people and saying this is the agreement. And sometimes you come out of these discussions and you don't feel like you feel great. Nobody does, but they know it's the right way moving forward because nobody got exactly what they wanted. But it pushes the needle forward. And sometimes you have to go that way. Not for everything, but it's definitely collaborating against people like a lot of Kaldari. We used to fight Kaldari all the time. And when we fight Kaldari, they may not like us, but we have to break bread. And if you're able to break bread, not hold grudges, and realize there's a bigger, grander purpose that you can serve to help improve the communities, um, then I think you'd be a good CSM member and just a good representative of Low-Sec or any area of space that you present, like Mick is. Like Mick is does a really good job of, you know, wormholes have a lot of animosity between these groups, and he has to navigate those planes very well, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, and wormholes, it's probably even harder, as we've seen in the past, to rally the community behind you. One, as you mentioned, you have to, reach across the aisle, etc. One big week where we did that was the CSM summit. It was your first time there. What was your thoughts? Did it match your expectations?
I wanted to say something that's NDA, but I can't say it. But it's so annoying. I think we worked really well as a team. And I think like going into it, like I don't know everybody. I'm a new kid on the block. Um, there's like a reputation associated, right? Like, how can we work together to achieve goals? And I think the biggest thing that we did as a CSM, we would hash it out before the meetings. So we would present a coherent plan. This is our collective opinion as the CSM, as your focus group. Let's jump through the hoops faster before, and let's get into the deeper like patty of the burger, so to speak, right? Immediately. And so our conversations, I felt, became a lot more in depth, faster, because we all agreed. And it forced CCP to like, oh, there's an agreement. We're on the same page. And people were like, huh? It was a good feeling. Um, and like then allowed us to put the ball rolling forward. And I feel we were a very productive summit. Like some of the conversations we had, um, which I think we talk about the topic because they're published,
Yeah.
like regarding projection. Uh, we also made a white letter which is to be posted. We're waiting for it to get approved, but basically a joint statement on the CSM about how our summit went and like how we're working as a team. And I think that's our success point, is that we're not looking to score points with each other. I think everybody genuinely cares about the betterment of the game, and everyone's passionate about it. I mean, just listen to Drake for 30 minutes about talking about Pochfin. I mean, that guy has his heart in the right place.
Yeah, it's not
Or
difficult
Kenneth, or
listening to
anybody.
Drake for 30 minutes. I think you have to. If you start listening to Drake, you better have 30 minutes.
Yeah.
In the most positive way, Drake.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the recent patch, because it's probably the culmination of most of the work that we've done as a CSM with CCP over the last year. And um, overall, I mean, tier 3 sites in nullsec you're not going to care too much about, other than Morphyte prices dropping quite rapidly this week, which is probably good for what you do and what most people do, actually. Even for me as a trader, that's a dropping price I very much welcome. But then on the other hand, there are other changes that have very large impacts. And that's, for example, capital ships and tier 1 battleships having their bill of material drop by about 20%. What's your thought? What have you seen since March 12th? How has your community taken this in? How has Low-Sec changed?
Oh, I think Lowsec's being a little bit stubborn. So like today we had a fight against every month we're starting to do like birthday fleets. So we will do like a big fleet, get a big fight for like people's birthdays. And we decided to form an inspector fleet today, and we did a Battens versus T1 Typhoons, because I feel like the meta is going to change to a T1 battleship meta, because right, battleships now fully fit are like 400 mil, and you're flying a 1.8 bill TC3. Why? Like, what's the point? It's 4 battleships for one TC3. Let's just slam and not kite each other anymore. The true low sec is like at 0. We're gonna. I can't say those 4-letter words on stream, but and just throw down. And like there's a little bit slow intake, and you see some people adopting change now. I think T1 battleships can become more and more the norm. I think they're super cheap. They're effective for their cost. You can have a lot of fun because who doesn't like slamming battleships into each other? And I think the March 12th did a really good example of caps are cheaper, which I think faxes need to be a little bit cheaper. I think they're still a little bit too expensive. We'll see how dread prices come down more with the minerals continually decreasing and more fight as well. But like C2 guns are going to become cheaper, which is fantastic because it was like 2.4 bill of more fight to fit up a Rev Navy basically at its peak. And really, dread should be cheap because low-sec is the place where you want to slam dreads into each other, where you want to just PvP all the time as much as you can. So I really do care also about having a healthy nullsec. I think that's like, oh, he's a low-sec guy, he doesn't give a crap about null. A healthy nullsec means a healthy low-sec. That means we can go in, get fights there. Stagnation is bad anywhere in the game. And so as null heals, so to speak, that means low-sec is also going to heal. And if we can go in and start whaling, which I don't know the data is that clear yet, I think we have to wait a couple more weeks, people are losing Roracles again more often, I think. I'm just looking. I have no numbers yet, but just looking at Zkill, looking at Rourke's loss, people are taking their Rourkes out. That's fantastic. Like, let's get more of that. More ships in space. More PvP. More stories. And I think that's the success of the March 12th is that it's getting people undocked. We're getting cheaper battleships. We're getting cheaper capitals. Hicks are back on Sino, so super hunters go at it once more. Um, and it just makes the game more dynamic and it changes things. Um, Cheap ships mean more people are willing to undock and have fun. And like I think that's the point of the game is really to have fun. Like if you want to take your battleship or dread out for a walk, brother, go take it for a walk.
If we're looking at the volume of excavator drone trades in the last week, then I would say Rocals are coming back out.
Yeah.
We finally see demand on that side again. But going back to something you said, you guys like to throw down, so that's similar to nullsec, except that nullsec crabs the shit ton out of their space. To afford that. So tell me, what do you do in low-sec to afford these large battles? Because no
Yeah.
matter whether
So
they're cheap or not, it's still a lot of ISK you need, and somebody needs to generate it for your space, right?
yeah. Um, I totally agree. So how low-sec people I think make ISK, I think that's like the next thing that really needs to be improved upon is low-sec ISK making. Like they did null mining. Let's look at low-sec mining because the best content generators was low-sec capital mining. Rorks and low-sec were so much fun. And there's like really everyone's using metanoxes now to make money and low-sec because I would rather want a PvP over my structures than sit in mine. So metanoxes and low-sec are great. They also help smaller groups out. I did see Dark Shines make a comment. Yes, supers need to go back out in space, but
That's just
that
Dark
is
Shine.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's right, right? Like we gotta wait see how things scale. Like if battleships get fixed, caps get fixed. If caps get fixed, let's then a diminished returns, focus on the super capital escalation chain, and higher and higher and higher, and get people out of space. But sorry, I just saw the comments. I got distracted. Um,
No worries.
at the same time, like how low-sec people like mining's not that great in low-sec. The anoms need to be rebalanced. Jaspit, whatever that spawns in every low-sec, is not that great. And so I think there's some related to standings issues and then things related to how anom sites work and how you lose standings when you're making ISK, so you can't enter certain areas of space. There's like a lot of barriers in low-sec to content generation. I think if we like eliminate those barriers, you'll see more groups in low-sec, you'll see more PvPing in low-sec, and like people won't like just be ping warriors. They'll be out in space doing things to create income. I do like I layer like battlefields, how they make income, like group centered PvP. That's also make ISKs. That's not broken like Pochven. Um, or it was broken, I guess. It's better now. And I think like that's how you have to improve the area is like how do we create this sort of high risk, high reward area where there's PvE sites where you have to use capitals that are not Satios that you can run it with free dreads, um, or like it funnels PvP opportunities, or like advanced battlefields where for those who don't know what a battlefield is, it's like the Apex faction warfare site that allows Navy battleship ships in. but like why not allow certain number of capitals in? Like why not allow certain have sites that have capital escalations in and get people to get comfortable using their caps? Which 11 bill for me as a hod red is like whatever, who cares? YOLO it every day, whatever. Um, but for some people, maybe their first time and they're anxious, and so integrating that scale, I think, could also help lowsec a lot. Um, but is generation really most people make money? Is their alliances make it off Metanoxes? And I think there needs to be more development there because it really hasn't been touched in a long time.
So Metanoxes were introduced last year, right? And I think most people looked at. Thank you, Dave, for the rate. And most people, I think, look at Metanoxes as mostly created for nullsec because it came in the nullsec expansion, right? But the
Yeah.
point you're making is actually really good, and that is, hey, if like, what is the space that actually lacks uh, the most ISK generation oriented people? I would say, crabs, as some people might say. Then it's probably lowsec because most people don't go to lowsec to crab. There are some, but I think way more people would either go to highsec or nullsec or even wormhole space to generate to crab, right? And so Metanox plays an important role there to generate passive ISK even more so in lowsec than in nullsec, where you have people that actually also want to just generally mine in nullsec. There's a lot of people that actually want to do that. But having said that, how um, how safe are you seeing Metanoxes in lowsec? So if we're looking at destruction rates in nullsec versus lowsec, you put up a Metanox in lowsec, how safe is it?
Depends what group you're in. So like if you're like in one of the big two, then relatively safe. So a lot of times in lowsec, we don't have coalitions, but nichely people form relationships with one of the bigger groups. The big two groups right now are Snuffed Out and Big AB. So people form relationships, so they're able to anchor metanoxes and grow. Because there's like a Bushido in lowsec, maybe not Snuff, because Stuff will just glass everything in Black Rise. Um, but there's an understanding in lowsec that you want to have your pond, the area that you're living in, have a lot of groups, have a lot of fish. So you can undock and you get content. The beauty of where we live is that I undock immediately, I can get a fight in under 5 minutes. Like I log in from work, I'm tired, grab a beer, log in, undock a crow, tackle a battleship. It's pretty great. Um, but if you are living in these more quieter areas, and that's like faction warfare, which are the busiest areas in lowsec. If you go to more quieter areas like Iridia, if you go to more quiet places like Molten Heath, maybe Solitude, there's areas for you people groups to grow. And if you're small, 10, 15 people, that's fantastic. You can maybe anchor a Metanox there. Not saying you should particularly go to those areas, or maybe in Northern Metropolis, maybe in Hymitar, Declan, and you talk to the groups. There's a social aspect of the game, and like naturally, I think I've always been a big advocate of smaller groups and defending smaller groups because like they're the lifeblood of the game. They bring the new players in, they help them introduce them to the game, and really form their own, foster their own niche communities. And so I think you can. But if you, excuse me, if you have an alliance that really wants mining, put an Athenor up, mine together, have that social commonality. The beauty thing about lowsec is that you're not a number. Like everybody knows each other. Like I know what my line members or my members what they do for a living. Most of them, I know whether they have kids or not. I know how we have meetups and stuff. Like you're not an n+1 number. You are a person with value. And I think that's the uniqueness about lowsec compared to big null blocks is you're not a number. You're a person. Um, and I think that social aspect of lowsec makes it very unique. Because we're not 40,000 people. You're like 500 or 1,000. And I think for lowsec groups, like the community as it grows gets bigger and bigger and bigger. A good person a really good example of that is Fam. People who know Fam he's a lowsec guy, runs an MPSI, caps elite PvP group, drops caps in lowsec all the time. Came from Baltrum, from Jutsu, all that stuff. African Atomic is his corp. Big shout out. great content creator, and he works with people like Odin's Call and brings all these sort of independent groups, and they just throw dreads against fraternity. Like that's awesome. Like that's like sort of culture that Low-Sec can really provide because we're smaller, we're more unique. Hopefully that answers your question. I sort of
Yeah, and
took a lot of
and,
things.
and it brings up another question. In like I am your in the I think we're on very much opposite sides in terms of like gameplay, because to me, and I've advocated for this a lot, like I don't want to stifle what you guys do in Low-Sec in any way, because clearly very popular, is generating
Mm.
a lot of content. People love it, and a lot more people love that sort of content that probably trading, let's say, as a whole.
Mm.
However, like one thing that I'm always baffled about is this: hey, let's go out um and fight without a strategic objective, right? That's why me as a player, I would always be drawn, like nowadays, more into, I don't know, sov holding space, because there's always a point you can make about holding sov or gaining sov, or like I'm somebody that needs a purpose, right? How do you feel about that? Like, how do you go into a large battle where you say there's no immediate strategic objective, or is it that there is a strategic objective, it's just not as obvious?
So I feel like it's a balance. Like you need to have a general goal or like an ethos in an alliance. And Sedition's like ethos is like we market ourselves to like our culture. So it's like working professionals, young. Most of our guys are between their late 20s, early 30s, or we have a couple Zoomers, and like we treat Eve like just a hobby, right? Like we want to do the higher end PvP, um, but like our culture is that like if you want to sling a hod red, I'm not going to tell you we can't do something, right? Like I don't care, like you put red on our kill board, right? Um, I think how you foster that is very group specific. So like Big AB does campaigns very early on. Big AB was fantastic, similar to Skill U, right? So like Big AB would deploy to an area, and my first real war, one of my first real wars in EVE I was a part of, was when Sedition fought Big AB and Syndicate back in like circa 2020. And that's their gameplay. They deploy used to different areas, smack group, kill them, move to the next area. It was great. It was horrible at the time because I only knew one comp, which was Ravens. But that was a lot of years ago at this point, and so it was like, and so it depends on the group. And for us, like our objective is to have fun. So like we want to win, we care about winning, but like if if it costs us the fight, like we don't need to upship to TFIs, facts, and dreads every time. We'll fight people in harbingers, and I try to advocate for that. We do have objectives, like whether it's recently we wanted to get Sasala, the assistant Sasala, to level 5 corruption so we can bubble camp in Sasala
Mm-hmm.
for Angel Cartel stuff, or it's um, we want to third party these guys more often, or like for example, there was a war between Sedit and Shadow Cartel and region of Genesis, Gur Shadow Cartel. But that's just the role play of it, I guess. And so what happens is that now they have all these allies that they call. So we're shooting their allies groups that helped them during the war, and it's like you create a narrative, you create a story, and depending on that story, it influences your objectives. And I think the goal behind that of creating those stories or narratives or whatever you want to describe them, for us that fuels our content. So how can we weave in this group that we're shooting? How does that fit into the narrative arc? How does that fit into our goals? And that sort of is like the ebb and flow of Low-Sec, is that, like for example, we recently fleeted up with a couple people, and then we shot them the next day, right? Like it just depends on like what's happening. And a very famous dread brawl that happened in Ignoitin against Big AB and Set It was or not Big AB and Set It, Big AB and Snuff, and then we helped Big AB with Shadow Cartel. Snuff brought in it and a bunch of other blocks, and it was a 1.4 trillion ISK dread brawl over a Metanox. I think that made 3 million ISK an hour. The objective for most of us is to fight. That's it. Like if we get the brawls, if we get the content, if we get the stories, the experiences, the memories, the videos, we're doing our job. And that fundamentally to me is like what I think keeps our players engaged. Sadly, the video has been deleted and bring up. No, it hasn't been. Jutsu has a beautiful Dread Brawl against Big AB. It's probably one of the best Dread Brawl videos of all time. You hear Boltrum going crazy in comms. I think Firebond made the video, and like it just shows that culture, is that teamwork. There isn't no one FC yelling at a person telling them you need to log in, do this, this, and this. It's teamwork. It's effort. And it's a little bit anxiety provoking, but if you like that and working under pressure, working with a team, building those stories and having fun memories with a certain group of people, then that's what Low-Sec is all about. End of the day, and I think that's how we figure out objectives. It's like what can put food in my members' mouth, but also like what can we get fun out of it? Because at the end of the day, it's a video game. Like you have a life, you have a job, you have a spouse, you have
Oh, I
kids, you have yeah.
I mean, so a few things to unwrap there. Like one is like I totally get, like a grudge is the best strategic objective
Yeah,
ever, right? Like
100%.
no question. Like of course, and I would think you like creating those storylines, those grudges is a big part of what you do as an alliance leader or as an FC in EVE Online. I think without it, it's kind of pointless. But I would like your last example there. I would equate that to. So I'm a huge football fan, right? For you American soccer, right? I'm huge, right?
Yeah,
And in football, there is like important matches like the World Cup or World Cup qualifiers, and then there's friendly matches, right? I don't fucking watch friendly matches. Like there's no way
of
I will
course.
watch a friendly match because I don't care. Just don't care. Except like let's say for Crota and chat here, Germany versus England, there is no friendly match. Like there could be a friendly match, but it's just for honor. So you might watch that just because it's just a rivalry. So there's always something there. There might be a red card in the friendly match because it's a rivalry. So you watch that, and that's more what I was trying to get at is
I see.
when you know like when you say Eve is a game and it shouldn't be a job, then I actually I don't like I don't agree with that argument, and it's not you're making that, but a lot of people make that in EVE Online is that it shouldn't be work to play this game. Well, I get that, but to me there has to be like when I say fun, like to me a pointless battle is not fun because the act of battling might not be as much fun to me as it might be to you because you might be thinking about comms and strategies, etc. So for you, that is fun. For me, it's not. And then for a third Eve player, it might be something completely different. They might not even consider it, right? So it's interesting to have that sort of discussion because I I just feel that is what also makes Eve great, right? There's so many different types of space. There's so many different types of players that are interacting in one way or the other, and different people need different types of motivation. It's just great that we have different parts of space that provide this motivation for different reasons to different people. And clearly, what you guys are doing in Low-Sec is getting a lot of response because I think Low-Sec has been very much reinvigorated through their last expansion as opposed to nullsec, and clearly there's a lot of content there that people like and that are bringing people to the game and keeping people in the game.
I want to expand on that a little bit. I think in Low-Sec, especially in Null 2, there's this sense of they don't want to lose what they have. So like in Low-Sec especially, like it used to be a lot worse when people used to bat phone all the time. It's not as bad now. But in Low-Sec, there was an opportunity for a massive war. And in this massive war, what happened was Big AB deployed to Lerm. Lerm reveres a Low-Sec system to fight Shadow Cartel. Shadow Cartel had 1,900 members. They were the largest low-sec group in the game. That's the only compliment they're going to get from me. And what's from them, like that was the tinderbox for a low-sec world war. And if I'm them, they make 400 bill a month off Metanoxes. They make tons of ISK. That is the tinderbox. Big AB also makes tons of ISK off their Metanoxes. It would have turned into a massive war. Lines were being drawn, sides were happening. But what happened was Shadow Cartel capitulated. They timed all their Metanoxes to 1100. They said, we're not going to fight. You're not going to engage. And what happened 2 weeks later? 3 of their biggest corps left them. because their leadership said, we're not going to fight. We're going to time zone tank, use our time zone advantage, and not fight, and deny contact for low-sec. And there's this sort of self-healing process that's going on that one group is now in Big AB, the other group went to Horde, the third group is now trialing for Snuff. And that is sort of this sort of ethos that low-sec has, is that we are like barbarians, right? We just want to club each other. It doesn't need to be a narrative. Give me any narrative. Who cares? Get me undocked, throw my dread, let's go, right? And when groups don't do that, Alliance implodes. And this is like ongoing right now. Like if you look on Dotland and Shadow Cartel, their slope is like freaking 70 degrees right now. And like that's the risk. Like if you don't provide, and that was the perfect opportunity. It's been 4 years since dock workers and NSH and Snuff had a beautiful low-sec war. That was it. That was that moment. Their leadership capitulated. They said no. And then people leave. And so like that's sort of the self-healing process, the sort of ongoing thing that keeps happening, is that people that want to fight will go to groups that fight. People that want to go to groups that want to commit. Even if you lose, who cares? Lick your wounds, next day we go again. And that's sort of this mentality that low-secers should have, is that yes, it's a game, there should be strategic objectives, but if I'm going to tell my members that I'm going to sweat my timers, we're not going to engage, we're going to blue everybody around us, basically make it a blue donut essentially, and not fight anybody, my people would crucify me on the cross. Like that's what would happen. My members would just leave, and that's what's happening to these groups, or this group in particular. And so like I think there's a self-cleaning process that happens in low-sec. And Null, I don't know if there is that thing that's happening. I'm not there as much. Maybe another person could talk to more about that. But like that is definitely low-sec culture healing. Is that people want to fight, people want to pew, and regardless of the narrative, telling no to your members for an entire war that would have been beautiful and would have made tons of news. People would probably end up using their supers for a first time in a year or plus. Get what you
If
deserve.
you put yourself in their shoes, though, like say you're the Shadow Cartel leader, and what do you think their motivations are? Like because clearly they don't go in and say, hey, we're going to deny content for the rest of lowsec.
It's Smog. It's Smog with his treasure. It's the same
Okay.
thing. I have all this money and revenue. I need to keep it as close to I can and not lose it, because I've lost it before, and they've lost it twice before. When Escalating Entropy left, when Lightning Squad left, in this particular group, it's happened to set it too. We've gone through our waves, but like you have to learn from that, understand like there's a self-healing mechanism or self-culture that's cleaning. And every group does it. Snuff has gone through periods like this too. And you have to you can't lose sight of your ethos of why you're in space. If you want a crab empire and just sit there and defend your empire and not do any risks, not use supers, not use capitals, not use, not take risk and lose sometimes. Some people may like that. That's fine. There's a calmness and safety. There's a little bit of peace, but you sell a part of your soul because it's pretty obvious, right? Like, why not take the fight? You're the biggest group in the game in low-sec. Why run away?
In
I don't
lowsec,
know.
I would agree. Like in lowsec, I might agree. If like should there be that type of gameplay in EVE Online? Absolutely. The more
Yeah,
safety or the more space taking part of the game, because there's a lot of people that enjoy that very much. So even if you're more into, let's say in the traditional sense of gaming, into base building, into resource
yeah,
management, etc., you're going to enjoy, I think, the nullsec gameplay a lot more than you might
correct.
the lowsec content. Even if you might just be a small cog in a large coalition, but it's like I totally understand how that's possible. I guess you could argue that if you want that kind of gameplay, then don't be in lowsec, or don't make a lowsec coalition.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like it's really interesting to see like what's happening, because like Null is similar. Like Null, there's a lot of safety. And apologize if I'm wrong. If you disagree, I humbly disagree. But like a lot of low-sec guys, I mean, Dark Giants, if you're still watching, Dark Giants comes into low-sec sometimes and brawls with us, right? That's great, right? Not saying you should completely invade low-sec Dark Giants, please don't. But
Don't taunt
what I'm
him. Yeah.
saying is, yeah, don't taunt. I mean, Dark Giants, look, he gets it. Like, he's an example of a gentleman, right? And his FCs are a lot of low-sec guys went to Init, and Init's a very aggressive null block. They attack other people, they do stuff, they want to throw down, they drop capitals in low. It's great. It's fantastic to see. They recently had a kerfuffle with Snuffed Out, I think, a couple weeks ago. And it's great. Like, that's what we want to see. Or like Horde came and fought Frat and Low-Sec multiple times. Fantastic to see. But like, it's there's like this underlying like Low-Sec like culture permutation that like has been there since the beginning. And it's like you can't we call it, I don't know if this is a comment or like white knuckling.
Hmm.
Like it's like if you are an M2, it's like that big M2 Titan fight. Let's say Goon said, "No, we're not going to defend this Keep Star." There are those moments. Or whether it was when Low-Sec banded together and Init and Horde and Frat, everybody came to shoot Snuff and Big AB over a Fortizar timer and Old Man Star in 2023. Like the coming togetherness, that story, like all the all smaller low-sec groups came together. We dropped over 100 dreads. It was like hasn't been probably since low-sec Voltron 2016 between Snuffed Out and Shadow Cartel when they worked together against goons. Like that was how big that fight was. I mean, we tackled a couple of their titans. It was fantastic. And like that's sort of that culture. It's like we want to sort of fight. How can we how can even tied to CCP, like how can CCP then promote that more? How can we get more people undocked? How can we get sweepers in space? How can we get more capital jet brawls, which is happening now every 10 days, or probably every 3 weeks on 2 to 3 weeks on low sec, which is fantastic. But like, how can we keep the grease of the engine going? How can we help these smaller groups grow, get an income so they can undock capitals as well? That's just the framework that I come from, and I think somebody like Seto does it also very well. Other people that are in Null, I think, a little bit other colleagues are all very cognizant. Like, how can we get more people undocked? And whether it's workles, whether it's not, whether it's mining, like how can we foster more content generation? Even though we're not directly talking about it, it's all interconnected. Sorry, I rambled for
Yeah.
like
No.
3 minutes. I apologize.
I mean, one way to facilitate those battles is cheaper dread prices, and we've seen in the last patch as well, specifically dreads targeted to be cheaper overall, even though we are seeing some bottlenecks in new items or in other components of dreads, namely exploration items or wormhole gas. You're still kind of limited in the production, but overall prices are or will be coming down. Do you
Uh,
notice that, or how when you're talking about trillion ISK dread brawls, where do your dreads come from? Who makes them? Do you care?
So I've been working, or we've been working, CSM has been working with a lot of the low-sec industry people during the March 12th change. Like we get our dreads, we build them ourselves. We use the Hool of Freeport. You're welcome, Big AB, for the free marketing for Hool us a TO. Um, uh, and we build our own dreads. We buy them from local suppliers. And so like dreads right now, I think I'm buying them between Rev Navies are like 4 to 4.2. They reach around 4 bill a pop. That's a great spot for them to be. Faxes, I think, right now are like 4.7. We do have the issue with the control items, and but we build our own dreads mostly, and it fuels our own little economy, our own little low-sec economy. There's a lot of big builders. Nolan, no, Firebrand builds, a bunch of people in Big Ed build, a couple people in Suddit build, a lot of other groups that just build and we just want to throw down. So it's it's a lot easier now. Also, like people run their own reactions, people are getting the items better, and T1 battleships are very easy to produce, and it'd be great to see more T1 battleship fleets. Um, Generally speaking, I think
Do
synergy
you
of
see?
steel.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Do you see Shine's comment in chat? Shine says you need to keep in mind that Low-Sec is able to do all of this primarily because of the lack of bubbles. The culture you are talking about exists in areas and null also, but when we drop a single dictor means trillions in losses. What's your take on that?
So we just had a dread brawl against Fleet probably a month ago in a corruption level 5 system where bubbles were in. I still submitted and fed 300 bill in dreads. It's a game. You got trillions of ISK. Use it.
Do you
Bubbles
have
don't scare
trillions of
me.
ISK? Puke?
Me? I'm worth 1.7 trillion. I just hit it. So I got 2 Titans. And now my net when the update hit, my net value dropped like 200 bill. I was so mad. I was, but I'm trying to complete a Titan set. Like I think that's the goal.
If you feed them, their value doesn't matter,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's true. Yeah, I know. But like we lost, it happens. But bubbles, I mean, sure, like I commit more, but like I want to win, I want to have fun. And I sure the scale, I think Shines does bring a fair point. The scale may be higher, right? They commit 300 billion ISK and dreads, then they get bubbled a lot, then it's constant, right? And then they have to re-escalate and constantly escalate. But I mean, maybe we just need to remove bubbles from nullsec, put fatigue on ANSYs everywhere. Make some changes, maybe. Shines. I'm just joking. He hates fatigue. I'm
I don't think
leaving at
that
you, my friend. But
and
he's fake hate.
it's really I don't think it's a case for changing one or the other. It's just a case
Yeah.
for explaining why the space is different. And I think that it's good that we have bubbles in one and not the other, because that's, as we discussed earlier, that's a place for people to try out different game styles, to have
Yeah.
different objectives, different ideas of fun in those regions. And as you're right, yeah, there has been spillover more recently than before. I think especially
Yeah.
because of in it, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it has done. I mean, I know Dark Shines is in chat, but like in it historically, like Blurkus has like we had a I don't know if Shines is aware, but a year ago we had an amazing was it a year and a half ago, we had a fantastic Dread Brawl in Aratent. It was in it, TD Sen, and like we just land big AB third partied. It was so much fun. And like we dropped, it was a coalition of other low-sec groups fighting against each other. And it was fun. Like everybody brought caps and we threw down. It was a great time. Um and yeah, like I think right now it is a conflict that's happening in Scalding Path between like Horde and Goons and like Nem's group boss and I forgot Rotz's group. Trying to give him a shout out. Whoever knows Rotz's group, please message in the chat, I guess. I'm forgetting to tip the name. Into the Blue, Into the Void, something like that.
I don't know. I know Rots,
I
but
don't
I don't
know.
know what his group name is.
Forgetting. I feel sorry, Rotz. I apologize. But like there's like conflict that's brewing in Null too, and I mean I don't know. I think a null war is going to happen. It's been 4 years since World War B. I'm praying. I'm praying. And if anybody wants to hire us, we'll be great mercenaries too. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's good. There's so much diversity, and just tying it back to CSM. Like I think that highlights in the CSM. Like my gameplay and Kenneth's gameplay is totally different. Like Kenneth showed me his like spreadsheets. I'm like, oh my god, like this guy's. I don't understand what I'm seeing, right? Or your like how what you do
Me
and
as
like
well.
what all. Yeah, right. Like it's totally different. Like you play a different Eve than I play, but we're still in the same ecosystem, right?
For
It's fun.
sure.
It's cool. It's awesome.
That's why Eve is the greatest game in the world, in my
It is the
in my point of view. Cool. Uh Anything else? YP? I mean, that's all my questions. Is there any calls you have for like what's on the agenda for changes in Low-Sec? What do you want to see happen? What's your outlook to the future?
We posted a manifesto for low-sec faction warfare. We submitted one to CCP. They have seen it. It is apparently there's like put it posted and it's an estimated time reader thing. It's apparently 20 minutes it takes to read. It was collected by a bunch of low-sec FCs, alliance executors, content creators, everything from mining and low-sec, faction warfare, low-sec, metanoxes. This covers everything. Like these are sort of the changes that we were looking for. But generally, if I make a theme of it, getting more people into space, fixing the issues within faction warfare, putting more skin in people's game so they have to defend and have a meaning or an objective purpose to undock and fight, not cower away. Um, to put more supers and titans in space. I mean, I think those are like the big three that we've been really championing. And hopefully we get those improvements. I'm praying. So,
Where can people find that white paper? Is somebody asking in chat.
so I've asked CCP if I could post it on Reddit. It's taking time because
Okay.
it has some NDA
Mm-hmm.
things. So,
Yep.
if you're interested and you have more questions, I live on Discord, probably a little bit unhealthy. DM me. I will happy answer any of your questions. You can use Set It Saves the Marquee Dragon. Somebody said that. It's a coupon code that funds our PvP, helps us out a
Absolutely.
lot. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for having me, Oz. It's been a pleasure. And I mean, for those who don't know, Oz and us Edition and Oz collaborated a year ago with for an Afrader event where we had a mini Dread
Eden
Brawl
trade. Yeah,
and Eden Trade.
that was fun.
Who, yeah, it was fun, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I still have the video footage from that, and I don't. I think there's so much good stuff there. I never really cut it up. I need to do a highlight reel. Cool. Thank you,
Cool.
YP, for joining us, and
Thank you for having me.
hopefully we'll see you back soon, and I'll see you next week for a CSM meeting. Those are in the middle of the night for me. I they're at 3 a.m., which is the worst time since I moved to Australia. And now I'm just relegated to listen most of the time listening to it afterwards, and then being half a day behind and trying to catch up with Discord and Slack. But
What
yeah,
we talked
that'll
about to help.
yeah.
Oh, not India. We were gonna take minutes. I can send you notes. Do you want me to
Oh,
send you notes when you're gone?
that would be
Okay,
wonderful. YP, that is
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, I'll send
Cool.
you notes so you don't have to like watch the whole thing. Because
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Okay.
Yeah, really good. Awesome. Then thanks for stopping by. Chat. We're gonna take a little quick bio break, and then we'll be back in 2 minutes. See ya. Thanks. Thanks, YP. Bye bye.
Thanks.